y'all, it's Laura, and this is a Cocoa Vanilla Studio layout. We're going to be scrap lifting one of my older Cocoa Vanilla Studio layouts with a boy collection, or rather a mix of boy collections. So I have these two really cool photos of my oldest son from several years ago, and he is playing with several sets of Legos. Now, Legos was a big deal for him at the time, and I have a lot of pictures of him playing with Legos, but this one in particular really had him hooked. It was a whole city of Legos in this small little platform, and he just loved it. So I'm going to be primarily using one of the older boy collections, You Rock. And this is one that we don't have in the shop anymore because it's been out for years, and I decided I should go ahead and use up what I have left of this collection in preparation for the No Limits collection that is coming out very soon. And since I'm having a boy collection come in, I decided to go ahead and finish up an old boy collection, and this is part of that. So using my original design, I had a couple of strips on the left side that were a little bit larger and a couple of strips on the right side that were a little bit thinner. Now, because this is a 12 by 12, while the original was a 9 by 12, I have gone with 3 strips on the left and on the right, just to adjust for that size change. I've also made my strips on the left a little bit bigger than the ones I used on the 9 by 12 layout, but I have stayed with the general color scheme. So in the original layout, one of the larger strips had a lot of color to it, and the other one was kind of a solid block of color. And I've done the same here with this little bit of star paper in the background that has all of the colors of the collection, and then we have a black and we have a wood grain. So these two are more neutral, they are more solid toned, and they will work the same way that the blue neutral-ish strip I used in the original did for that layout. Now again, there's a little difference with this layout. I only have 2 photos instead of 3, so I've decided to cut apart one of the papers into this lovely little journaling spot. I don't end up using it for journaling though, but I thought at the time that I might. So instead of modifying the entire design to fit 2 photos, I've simply filled in the gap with something else. That for me is a much easier way to handle a slight change, like a different number of photos, than to completely alter the design to fit just 2 photos. So keep that in mind. You can always come up with creative ways to fill gaps if your photo number count is different, or if you have different types of papers or products. You can always fill in gaps a lot easier than you can redesign an entire layout. Now, go ahead and tape everything down. I love this collection because it has little pops of bright orange and the blue. And those two together for me are great color options for boy layouts because my boys tend to wear both of those colors quite a lot. One thing I would love to see more of in boy collections, just across the board, is red. I love the color red, and my boys wear it constantly. And so I'm really excited that the new collection, No Limits, does have some pops of red. Very excited about that. Now, I did forget that I wanted to overlap this here stripe a little bit, and so I am going to do that very quickly, kind of shuffling it under the edge, and I ended up doing the same thing on this other side. On the other side, I also forgot that I wanted to overlap my stripes, and will end up having to shuffle around a little bit too. That's okay. That's what double-sided tape is great for. I purposely buy double-sided tape that is not too sticky. There are some types of tape that are just so sticky that once you put it down, you're done, you're over, no moving it, no shifting it. I prefer double-sided tape that initially is repositionable, and then over time it becomes really sticky and stays put. The tape that I use is just really cheap stuff from Amazon, and it does the trick. I love these little rulers in this collection, and they made really good borders for this particular layout. Now, if this was a school layout, that would be even better. I probably would have left the numbers showing, but because it's not, I decided that those numbers were going to draw too much attention to themselves, and so instead decided to hide the numbers underneath the other strips and just the little dash marks show. Now on this particular piece, I wanted to make sure that that left side allowed me to tuck things underneath of it. So initially I do put down the tape, but I don't pull off the backing. And so When I'm done, I'll pull off that backing at the end and stick down my photos on top of all the beautiful little stars that are going to fall down that left side. In the original layout, I did use florals, a ton of fussy cut florals. We're going to use fussy cut stars. A number of these were fussy cut from a patterned paper. Some were punched from leftover scraps of paper from this collection and other boy collections. And I'm just going to create a big scattering of stars, a big vertical clustering element on the left side of the page. So looking at colors mostly at this point. These are all roughly the same size, so I'm looking at colors and trying to split them up as much as possible. So I've got gray, I've got orange, a little bit of yellow, got some tealy color and some light blue. And so I'm just trying to play with moving these colors around that strip and making sure I don't have two that are exactly the same color right next to each other. I also have a ton of these teeny tiny little stars that are again punched from scraps, and I'm going to use those as my scattering around these stars. Now in the original layout, I also had a cluster at the top photo, the bottom right corner of the top photo, and the bottom right corner of the entire layout. I am going to mimic that in this layout, though I have moved them slightly. In the original, I didn't know where I was going to put my title right away, and so my little star cluster at the bottom right ended up being a little bit higher, and it was kind of tricky to get it just right with my title. Remembering that, I've moved this one down a little bit lower, which gives me a lot more room for my title. Ends up working out perfectly. Now, these little rectangles that I've got happening on both of my strips here, these are actually the inside pieces that you punch out from one of those little ViewMaster reels, you know, those little paper things that have you put them in the little ViewMaster and click it and it shows you images. Well, this was an ephemera piece, and I think I'm trying to guess which collection it was from. It might have been You Rock, I'm not really sure. It was one of the older ones for sure, one of the older boy collections. And I'd already used the little reel piece. These were just the little squares inside of the reel. And I saved them for some reason, and now we're using them. I think it adds a really nice little detail to these strips that they didn't have before. It's not in your face, it doesn't pop out in any major way, it's not a bright color, it's nothing that's really going to draw a lot of attention to itself, but because of the repetition of being on both sides of the page, it coordinates really well and it just works. It's just a fun little bit like stitching. So if you add stitching to a layout, quite often that adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest in your detail work. This is the same thing. These kind of unnecessary little details that you add around the side or to unimportant areas are just detail work. And often detail work is the big difference between a layout being amazing and good. There's nothing wrong with a layout being just good, but if you want to get to amazing, keep working on your detail work. Keep adding to your detail work. Look for small things that you can add around the page that just make it a little bit more special. So now I decided I needed more stars because we didn't have enough. So I punched out some smaller stars from this wood grain paper, and I'm going to intersperse those amidst the colors, which gives them not only a variable size of stars, but also it breaks up the colors a little bit, adds a little bit of a neutral in there as well, and that works beautifully. I really like what that adds to that vertical cluster of stars down the left side. Now, as you can see, I'm trying several bits and pieces here to add to these two star clusters. The one at the top here next to my top photo is very simple: star, arrow, wood veneer pieces, and little clustering, little scattering bits at the top. The one down at the bottom, I end up going with more or less the same thing, but not exactly. So I started that way. I started with a star, an arrow, and then my wood veneer piece. But I decided it really needed a second star just to make it a little bit more impactful on the page. And then I pulled off the arrow and thought, yeah, I like it better without the arrow for this one. So keep playing around with your little clusters of embellishments. Small clusters like this are really easy to make, and they can be such a difference between your layout feeling finished and not. I did have these two in wood veneer pieces in my stash. It was part of one of these collections, and I don't know if it was part of a larger title or if it legitimately just had OR. That's all I have, so I made it work. The little tiny word phrase sticker at the top says unique. So it says unique kid or legend, which I thought was rather cheeky and kind of fun. And so I went ahead and went with that for my title. Finishing it off, we're going to do a little bit more scattering with some of these lovely legendary enamel dots. These have a lot of similar colors to this collection and some neutrals as well, which is very, very helpful when you have a lot of bright colors on your layout. Bringing in these neutrals can help balance things out. Once my scattering is complete, we're going to bring in my T-square ruler to add my journaling. I don't have a ton to say on this. I just want to talk about his little Lego city. And so I'm just going to draw a few lines underneath of the title, just like I did on the original layout. It's a great spot for journaling. It helps to connect the left side with the right. And I love that bit of cohesiveness. Adding in my journaling, I will just kind of skip ahead so that we're done. Before moving on to my splattering. I did do a quick outline on the outside borders and then around my photos, and that's it for my bordering. I just thought it needed a little bit more definition in those places. And then I'll bring in some controlled splattering with my black Nuvo drops, and then we'll come in with some uncontrolled splattering with Heidi Swapp Color Shine or any gold ink spray, gold watercolor, anything like that would work. I just used up the last of this bottle nearly. I'm almost done with it, and I'm just determined to find something else to take its place. Now that the splatter is just about done, this layout will be complete. Be sure to check out the Cocoa Vanilla blog to see detailed photos and more information about which collections I've mixed together on this one, because it is several boy collections in little variances across the page, trying to make a dent in that boy stash. That Cocoa Vanilla blog is at cocovanilla.com.au. That's it for me, guys. Until next time, bye y'all.